fluent in English.
Yeah.
Well, we're diving into a podcast script today. It's called Fluent Conversations, and they say they found 15 of those magic words.
Huh, interesting.
Yeah, so it's not about, like, sounding super smart, right?
Right.
It's about that natural flow you hear, like, native speakers using, like, I can explain something perfectly, but it'll still sound like I'm reading it from a textbook.
Oh, for sure.
So to show us how it's done, this script has a conversation between these two friends, Emma and Jake.
Okay.
To show these words in action.
Okay, I like that.
And then it breaks down each word.
Gotcha.
Ready to eavesdrop.
Let's do it.
Okay, so Emma starts by saying, I ran into Sarah yesterday at the mall.
Okay.
Now Jake, he jokes that he pictures her, like, literally crashing into Sarah. Which I thought was hilarious.
Yeah.
But it's funny because run into is one of those phrases that doesn't translate literally, like it means to meet by chance.
Yeah, yeah.
But think about it. Doesn't it sound way more natural than just saying, I met Sarah?
Oh, exactly.
Yeah, it's casual, right?
Yeah.
Off the cuff.
But I think there's, like, even more to it than just being casual.
Ooh, okay.
So choosing ran into instead of met, it kind of shows, like, a cultural preference.
Okay.
So in English, we often like to use more indirect language, especially when we're talking about something that, like, we weren't expecting, like running into someone.
I never thought about it like that.
Yeah.
So it's not just what you say, it's how you say it.
Exactly.
There's so much packed into these, like, simple words.
For sure.
Okay, next phrase. Emma asks Jake, could you give me a hand with these boxes?
Okay.
Of course, Jake knows she just needs help, right?
Right.
Not a literal hand.
Uh-huh.
It's another example of this, like, indirect language thing.
Yeah, I was going to say definitely.
So give me a hand. It makes it sound nicer, right?
Yeah.
It's more like we're working together, not me demanding something.
Exactly. Exactly.
It assumes that, like, we're already on good terms.
Right.
Interesting. So even when we're asking for help, English speakers, we like to beat around the bush a little bit.
Well, it's not really like avoiding the question. It's more about, being polite.
Okay.
And not sounding too direct or demanding.
Makes sense. Okay, so then Emma says, we need to wrap up this meeting soon.
Okay.
So wrap up, I feel like this is one of those words that you can use all the time.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
In so many situations.
It works for meetings, projects.
Yeah.
Even just conversations.
Exactly. And what I think is so cool about this is it paints a picture in your mind, right?
Right.
It's like you're really tying everything up together. Yeah, I can almost see it.
Yeah, and I think because it's so visual like that, it makes it more memorable.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, and easier to use.
Okay, next one. Emma says, I'll keep an eye on your bag while you get coffee.
Okay.
So it's more than just watching it, right?
Okay.
There's, like, responsibility there.
Yeah.
Like saying, I got you covered.
Yeah, and I think that's why it's so effective. It's like there's that deeper meaning,
Yeah.
It's not just the words, but it shows the trust between Emma and Jake.
Okay, up next, Emma says, hang on, I need to grab my jacket before we go.
Okay.
It's so simple, right?
Yeah.
But, like, so important for every day.
Oh, yeah. I use it all the time.
Who hasn't yelled that running out the door?
Yeah.
But, like, it's friendly, right?
Yeah.
It's not like an order. It's just like, hey, wait a sec.
It's just a quick little, hold on.
Yeah.
And it also, like, it implies it'll be quick,
Yeah.
You're not asking for a lot.
Okay, now this next one, I feel this one in my soul.
Okay.
Emma says, I messed up my presentation, but my teacher was really understanding.
Oh, yeah?
Mess up. It's interesting, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like, it doesn't sound as bad as, like, fail. Fail sounds so final.
Totally.
This is more like you tripped up, but you can recover.
Yeah. And it also shows that she's, like, taking ownership,
Yeah.
But without beating herself up too much about it.
Which is good life advice in general, I think.
Right.
Okay, now Emma asks Jake, can you drop me off at the bus station?
Mm-hmm.
Now this one's interesting.
Oh, how so?
Because it, like, kind of shows how we have certain social rules just with language.
Oh, boy.
Like, you wouldn't just ask a stranger to drop you off.
Right.
You're kind of doing them a favor.
Yep.
It assumes you already go in that way, and you're cool with going a little out of your way.
Yeah, exactly.
It's way more natural than saying, like, can you please transport me to the bus station using your vehicle?
Oh, my God, yeah.
Okay, what does Emma say next? So Emma says, I'll check it out and let you know.
Okay.
It's like the perfect thing to say if you want to show you're interested.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It's way better than just saying, like, okay,
Right.
you're actually going to, like, do something.
Yeah, exactly. Even though it's simple,
Yeah.
it shows you're, like, thinking ahead.
Yeah.
Which is good.
Okay, then Emma mentions she has to come up with a good idea for our project.
Oh, yeah, this is something we can all relate to.
Ugh, tell me about it.
Whether it's for work
Mm-hmm.
or just, like, trying to figure out what to make for dinner.
Seriously.
It's that mental struggle. Like, you're trying to make something new.
Okay, next up, Emma gets excited and says, I'm looking forward to our trip next week.
Okay.
This one is just like pure excitement, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, anyway.
And it's cool how she brings Jake into it,
Yeah.
by saying our trip.
Yeah.
It makes them, like, closer because they're both excited.
Okay, but then Reality hits. Emma says, I need to figure out how to fix this problem.
Yeah.
We've all been there.
Oh, for sure.
This just shows, like, you're not going to give up.
Right.
You're going to find a way to fix it.
Exactly.
So we already saw her mess up earlier, and now she says, I was late, but I made up for it by bringing coffee.
Oh, nice.
Smooth, right?
Right. Yeah.
Like, you messed up, but you're going to make it right.
Yeah, it's like a little apology, but without actually saying sorry.
I like that.
It's like, you messed up, but you're trying to fix it.
Okay, then things get a little dramatic. Jake says he passed out from exhaustion.
Okay.
So it means to faint, right?
Yeah.
But by adding, like, from exhaustion,
Right.
you really know how tired he must have been. Like, he couldn't stay awake.
Yeah.
Okay, we're getting to the end of their conversation, and Jake says she showed up late to the party.
Okay.
So he's just saying what happened, right?
Right.
But showed up, it kind of sounds like he's, like, judging her a little.
Yeah, like it was her choice to be late.
Yeah.
Not something, that she couldn't control.
Interesting.
Yeah. So even a little word like that, it can show what you really think.
Okay, finally, Jake says, we had to put off our meeting until next week. I feel like this is so much nicer than saying we canceled.
Oh,
like it's not gone forever.
Right. It's just waiting for a better time.
Yeah, like we're still committed.
Exactly.
So that's all 15 words in action.
That was cool.
And remember, the podcast, we're deep diving into fluent conversations. They give you a challenge.
Oh, fun.
So they have 3 sentences.
Okay.
And you have to figure out which word fits best.
Okay.
First one, I link my keys, and now I can't find them anywhere.
Ugh, I hate when that happens.
So relatable.
The perfect word is messed up.
Okay.
Because it's your fault, and you're like frustrated because of it.
Second challenge, I'll blank your dog while you're on vacation.
Okay.
So this one is all about taking care of something, right?
Right.
So the answer is keep an eye on. Much better than saying, like, I will supervise your canine.
Oh, my God. Yeah. Way too formal.
Okay. Last challenge, let's blank dinner until next week.
Okay.
So we're just moving it to later.
Yeah.
The best word here is put off. It's like hitting the pause button.
Exactly.
I love how, like, effortlessly those words fit into the sentences.
Yeah, it's like they were made for them.
And that's why it's so important to master these, like, everyday words.
Right.
Because they make you sound so much more fluent.
Exactly. It's like building blocks for your conversation.
So we learned a lot, huh?
Yeah, I think so.
Just from those 15 words.
Right. And just like hearing them in a normal conversation.
It's kind of crazy how much we can pick up just from that.
It really shows you that like fluency isn't about, knowing every word in the dictionary.
Right.
It's more about like how you use those words to connect with someone.
To really get your point across.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what does this all mean for like our listener?
Well, it means they can like totally improve their fluency.
Okay.
Just by like looking at the phrases they use every day.
Yeah. Instead of just saying stuff without thinking.
Right. Like actually think about why you're using that word.
Okay. Yeah.
And like how it makes the other person feel.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And if you can do that, you'll sound so much more natural.
And confidence. So, okay, we get it. We got to use the right words. But like, how do we actually do that?
Good question. Well, I have a challenge, kind of like in the Fluent Conversations podcast.
Okay.
Think about some other simple phrases that you could start using today.
That would make us sound like more natural.
Exactly.
Ooh, that's a tough one.
Yeah, but I think like one thing you could do is like pay attention when you're watching a movie.
Okay.
Or a TV show and see how they say things.
Oh, yeah, steal their lines, basically. And then, like, actually use them when you're talking to someone.
Right, don't be scared to try it out.
Yeah, and see what works, see what feels good.
Exactly, it's like a little experiment.
I love that.
We could even, like, all share what we find.
Oh, yeah, that would be cool.
Everyone can, like, learn from each other.
Because at the end of the day, language is about connecting with people, right?
Yeah, it's about, like, building relationships, sharing what you think.
Exactly.
And the better you are at English, the easier that is to do.
So true. So keep exploring, keep experimenting, and keep those conversations flowing.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Until next time, happy language adventures. All right, buckle up, because today we're diving deep into something you specifically requested.
Oh, yeah.
Boosting your vocabulary.
Yes.
For more fluent and confident English.
It's going to be good.
Now, before you panic, we're not expecting you to memorize the entire dictionary.
Not at all. This is about those key words, the kind that can make a real difference in how you express yourself. Especially in those situations you mentioned where you want to feel more confident and articulate.
Exactly. And luckily, the source material we're using is super organized with 60 powerful words.
Wow.
Grouped into 6 helpful categories.
I like it.
Though it is kind of funny that the source itself is structured like a podcast episode.
Very meta.
Yeah.
But we'll skip those instructions and jump right into the good stuff.
Okay, let's unpack this first category, expressing opinions.
Okay.
The first word that jumps out at me is concur.
Ooh.
It just sounds so much more decisive than a plain old, I agree, you know?
Absolutely. Concur implies you've actually considered the information and come to a thoughtful agreement, which could be especially powerful, say, in a professional setting,
Right.
where you want to project competence.
Oh, that's a good point. It's not just about using fancy words. It's about choosing the right word to convey the specific message you want.
Exactly. And speaking of conveying messages, the next word, imply, reminds me of something you mentioned. You said you sometimes struggle to give feedback delicately.
Oh, yeah.
Well, imply could be your secret weapon there.
Ooh, tell me more.
So instead of directly criticizing, you can imply your suggestion.
Okay.
For example, instead of saying that report was too long,
Right.
you could say, I wonder if the report's key points could be summarized more concisely.
Oh.
You're implying that it needs to be shorter without directly saying it.
That's brilliant. It softens the criticism while still getting the message across. I can definitely see myself using that.
See, it's all about understanding the nuances of these words and how they can be applied in real-life situations.
Okay, I'm starting to get really excited about this. What else do we have in this category?
Well, we have refute, which is perfect for dismantling a flimsy argument. Politely, of course.
Right.
Remember those meetings where someone proposes an idea that just doesn't hold up?
Oh, I know those meetings all too well.
Refute allows you to disagree respectfully while presenting evidence or logic to back up your stance.
So instead of just saying, I disagree, I could say something like, I understand your point, but I'd like to refute it by presenting these statistics.
Exactly. It shows that you've considered the other perspective, but have a well-reasoned counter-argument. Very effective.
Okay, I'm loving these words already. Now, what about this pair, imply and infer? I always get those mixed up.
Ah, yes, a classic linguistic conundrum. Remember that example we just discussed about implying feedback?
Yes.
Well, if someone inferred from your subtle suggestion that the report needed to be shorter,
right,
that would be on them drawing a conclusion from what you implied.
Okay, so imply is on the speaker side and infer is on the listener side. Got it.
You got it. Now, there's another word of this category that I think would be particularly useful for you.
Okay.
Assert. You mentioned wanting to be more vocal in meetings, right?
Oh, yes. Sometimes I feel like I fade into the background a bit.
Well, assert is your power word. Imagine yourself saying, I want to assert that we need to prioritize user experience in this project.
Wow. I can already feel the difference. Assert just has this air of confidence and conviction.
Exactly. It shows that you're not afraid to speak your mind and that you believe in the value of your contributions.
This is fantastic. I'm already feeling more empowered to express my opinions effectively. Okay, what's next on our vocabulary adventure?
Let's move on to personal qualities. This category is all about the words that describe who we are at our core.
Ooh, this sounds intriguing and a little bit introspective, perhaps.
Absolutely. For example, we have meticulous.
Okay.
Which describes someone who pays incredible attention to detail.
Right.
Now, thinking back to your work, I know you take pride in delivering high-quality results. Would you say meticulous is a word that resonates with you?
Definitely. I'm always striving for perfection, whether it's editing a script or organizing an event.
So owning that word and using it to describe your work ethic could really enhance how others perceive your strengths. You could say something like, I'm meticulous in my approach to project management, ensuring that every detail is accounted for.
I love that. It's not just about sounding smart, it's about accurately representing my skills and values.
Precisely. And speaking of values, the next word, resilient, is one that I think we can all relate to.
Oh, absolutely. Life throws curveballs, and it's all about how we bounce back.
Exactly. Resilience isn't about avoiding challenges.
Right.
It's about having the inner strength to overcome them. And remember that setback you told me about how you handled that difficult client situation?
Oh, yeah.
That's a perfect example of your resilience in action.
You know, you're right. I never thought of it that way, but I did manage to navigate that situation effectively and learn from the experience.
Exactly. So when you encounter future challenges, remember that experience and the strength you demonstrated. That's what resilience is all about.
Wow, this is really powerful stuff. I'm starting to see how these words aren't just about expanding my vocabulary. They're about reframing my thinking and recognizing my own strengths.
That's exactly the point. Now, before we move on, I noticed that candid appears in two categories.
Oh.
Personal qualities and sophisticated conversations. I wonder what that tells us about the importance of honesty.
That's interesting. Maybe being candid is more valuable than we sometimes realize, both in our personal lives and in those more complex discussions.
It's definitely something to ponder. So before we delve into those sophisticated conversations, let's take a moment to reflect. If you had to choose 3 words from this personal qualities list to describe yourself, which ones would you pick and why?
Ooh, that's a great question. I think I would choose meticulous, resilient, and maybe insightful. I feel like those words really capture my approach to work and life in general.
Those are excellent choices. And they highlight the power of owning those qualities and using them to your advantage.
All right, I'm ready to dive into the next category, words for making conversations sound more sophisticated. But I have to admit, I sometimes feel a little silly using big words in casual conversations. Like, will people think I'm trying too hard?
I understand that concern, but think of it this way. These words aren't about showing off.
Right.
They're about expressing yourself more precisely and vividly. It's like having a wider range of colors to paint with.
Okay, that's a helpful analogy. So it's less about sounding smart and more about using the right tool for the job.
Exactly. For instance, the word ubiquitous. Yes, it sounds a bit academic, but it's also incredibly useful for describing something that's everywhere. Like, remember how we were talking about that new social media app everyone's using?
Oh, yeah? The one that's suddenly taken over all my feeds?
Instead of just saying it's everywhere, you could say, that app has become ubiquitous. It just adds a touch of sophistication and precision.
You're right, it elevates the language a bit without sounding pretentious. Okay, I'm starting to see the appeal. What other sophisticated words do we have here?
Well, there's ephemeral,
Okay.
which describes something fleeting or short-lived.
Right.
Now, think about that feeling you describe when a really great book ends, or when you finish a project you've poured your heart into.
Oh, I know that feeling well. A mix of satisfaction and a little bit of sadness that it's over.
Exactly. It's a bittersweet feeling, and ephemeral captures that perfectly. You could say the joy of finishing that project was wonderful, but also somewhat ephemeral.
That's beautiful. I'll definitely be adding ephemeral to my vocabulary arsenal.
And, it doesn't have to be reserved for deep philosophical discussions. You could even use it to describe something as simple as a beautiful sunset.
Oh, that's true. The sunset's colors were vibrant yet ephemeral. I love it.
See, these words can add depth and richness to any conversation, even everyday ones. Now, what about notorious? It's a fun one.
Ooh, yes. It's like that restaurant is notorious for its terrible service, or that politician is notorious for flip-flopping on issues.
Exactly. It conveys a sense of infamy or bad reputation, adding a little bit of spice to your storytelling.
Okay, I'm ready to move on to the next category, words for work and professional settings. I'll be honest, I initially thought I could skip this section since I'm not in a super corporate environment.
That's a common misconception. While these words might be frequently used in offices, understanding them can be valuable in any setting where you're collaborating with others.
You know, you're right. For example, delegation. It's not just about bosses assigning tasks. It's about effectively distributing responsibilities in any group project, even planning a volunteer event or a community initiative.
Exactly. Understanding delegation can help you be a more effective leader even in informal settings. And then there's facilitate, which is such a useful word for anyone who wants to help things run smoothly.
Oh, I love facilitate. It's like I want to facilitate a brainstorming session where everyone feels comfortable sharing their ideas.
Exactly. It implies a sense of guidance and support, creating an environment where everyone can contribute effectively. Now, I know you mentioned sometimes feeling overwhelmed by group projects. Delegation and facilitate are perfect examples of words that can empower you to take charge and guide those projects towards success.
Wow, that's a really empowering perspective. I'm already feeling more confident about handling those collaborative situations.
And even a word like synergy, which might make you roll your eyes a bit.
Oh, definitely. It's such a buzzword.
It is. But putting aside the corporate jargon, the underlying concept is actually quite valuable. Synergy is about recognizing that the combined effort of a group can be greater than the sum of its individual parts.
Okay, when you put it that way, it does make sense. It's about the power of collaboration and how different skills and perspectives can come together to create something truly amazing.
Exactly. And that's a powerful concept to understand regardless of your work environment.
All right, I'm starting to see the value in these work and professional settings words. They might not be the most glamorous, but they are incredibly useful for clear communication and effective teamwork.
And speaking of clear communication, let's move on to a category that's all about expressing ourselves authentically, emotions and reactions. This is where things get really interesting.
Oh, I love this category. These words are so much more nuanced and evocative than just saying happy or sad.
Exactly. It's like having a whole spectrum of colors to describe the complexities of human emotion. For example, exasperated. It perfectly captures that feeling of utter frustration and annoyance, like when you're dealing with a never-ending queue or a computer that just won't cooperate.
Oh, tell me about it. I felt that way just this morning when I was trying to book a flight online and the website kept crashing.
I can imagine it's much more specific and vivid than just saying annoyed, right?
Absolutely. And then there's elated. It's not just happy. It's a feeling of pure joy and exhilaration, like when you achieve a long-awaited goal or receive wonderful news.
Exactly. And what's interesting is that understanding a wider range of emotion words can actually help us to better regulate our own emotions.
Oh, how so?
When we can accurately label our emotions, we can start to understand the triggers that cause them and develop strategies for coping with challenging situations.
That's so true. If I can pinpoint exactly what I'm feeling, it's easier to figure out how to address the issue or shift my mindset. It's like having a roadmap for my own emotional well-being.
Exactly. It's about becoming more emotionally intelligent, both in understanding ourselves and in empathizing with others.
Okay, this is fascinating. So it's not just about expressing ourselves, it's about understanding the emotions behind the words.
Precisely. And speaking of understanding, how are you feeling right now?
Let me see. I think I'm feeling a mix of intrigued and inspired. This deep dive is really opening my eyes to the power of language.
That's wonderful to hear, and it's a perfect example of how expanding our vocabulary can enhance our self-awareness and emotional intelligence.
All right, I'm excited to explore our final category, words for everyday conversations. These are the words we use all the time, but maybe we could be using them more effectively.
Exactly. It's about refining our everyday language to express ourselves with greater clarity and impact. For example, the word tedious. We all have those tasks or activities that we find boring and repetitive.
Oh, absolutely. Filing paperwork, cleaning the bathroom, waiting on hold. The list goes on.
Exactly. But instead of just saying, ugh, this is so boring, you could say, this paperwork is incredibly tedious. It just adds a touch of eloquence to your complaint.
Huh, I love that. It's like elevating the art of complaining.
Precisely. And then we have substantial.
Okay.
Which is a word you can use to describe something significant or meaningful.
Right.
It could be a substantial meal, a substantial accomplishment, or even a substantial improvement in your communication skills.
Ooh, I like that. It adds a sense of weight and importance.
Exactly. And finally, we have inevitable, which is a great word to use when discussing trends or events that seem certain to happen.
Like, it's inevitable that technology will continue to advance at a rapid pace, or it's inevitable that this cake will be devoured in minutes.
Huh. Both excellent examples.
You know, I'm really impressed with how versatile these everyday conversations words are. They might seem simple at first glance, but they can add so much depth and nuance to our everyday language.
Exactly. It's all about choosing the right words to convey our thoughts and feelings with precision and clarity. And remember, this deep dive is just the beginning of your vocabulary journey.
That's right. It's about continually exploring language, experimenting with new words, and finding those hidden gems that allow us to express ourselves more authentically and effectively.
And who knows, maybe one day you'll be the one casually dropping ephemeral and ubiquitous into everyday conversations, leaving everyone in awe of your eloquence.
Huh, I wouldn't mind that, but seriously, this has been such an eye-opening experience. I'm feeling inspired to pay more attention to my language and to embrace the power of words.
That's fantastic. And remember, the journey of language exploration is a lifelong adventure. There's always something new to learn, and the possibilities for expression are endless.
You know, as we wrap up this deep dive into powerful vocabulary,
Right.
I think it's important to remember that this isn't just about sounding smarter.
Absolutely, it's about so much more than that.
Right. We've talked about how the right words can help you be more persuasive in meetings,
Yes.
give feedback more delicately, even navigate those tricky group projects you mentioned.
Precisely. A richer vocabulary is like having a sharper set of tools. It allows you to express yourself with more nuance and precision, whether you're writing an email,
Right.
giving a presentation,
Right.
or just having a casual conversation.
It's like the difference between using a bull knife and a razor-sharp one.
Oh,
You can still get the job done with the dull knife, but the sharp one makes it so much easier and the results are so much cleaner.
I love that analogy. And just like with any skill building, a strong vocabulary takes practice.
Totally. But it's not about memorizing a bunch of fancy words and then awkwardly shoehorning them into every sentence.
Definitely not. It's about understanding the subtle shades of meaning, the contexts in which certain words are most effective,
Right.
and then using them in a way that feels natural and authentic to you.
So it's not just about the quantity of words we know, it's about the quality of our understanding and how we use them.
Exactly. And that's where the real power lies.
So, dear listener, as we wrap out this deep dive,
Okay.
we want to encourage you to embrace the journey of language exploration.
Don't be afraid to pick up a dictionary, browse through a thesaurus, or even just pay close attention to the language used in books, articles, and conversations.
And remember, even incorporating just one new word from this deep dive into your regular vocabulary can make a noticeable difference.
It's like adding a new color to your palette, a new spice to your cooking, a new tool to your toolbox.
And who knows, maybe you'll inspire someone else to start paying more attention to their own language.
Exactly. And that's how we create a ripple effect, raising the level of communication and understanding for everyone.
So with that in mind, we encourage you to go out there and experiment with your newfound vocabulary. Don't be afraid to make mistakes.
Yes.
To play with words and to discover the endless possibilities of expression.
Because the power of language is within your grasp, and the journey of learning is one that never truly ends.
That wraps up our deep dive into powerful English vocabulary. We hope you've enjoyed this exploration and that you'll continue to discover the magic and the power of word.
Until next time, happy communicating.
All right, so today we're going to be looking at something that you might think you've already mastered.
Oh.
Formal versus informal English.
Yeah.
You're probably already pretty good at it, right?
Most people are, yeah.
But we are going to go beyond just good.
Okay.
We're going for masterful.
I like it.
We're unlocking a secret code today
A secret code.
to help you tailor your communication
Okay.
to make the maximum impact possible.
Right.
Whether you're trying to, be super credible in the boardroom
Right.
or just bond better with your friends.
Yeah, and that's the key, isn't it? It's not just about knowing the rules, but it's about understanding the why behind them.
The why.
Yeah, like why does a certain word choice make us feel a certain way? How do these subtle shifts in language, really impact our perceptions and interactions?
Yeah, and we're basing this deep dive on a podcast called Fluent Conversations.
Okay.
And one of the things that really surprised me was how easy it is to sabotage yourself by using the wrong level of formality.
Oh, interesting.
Like, imagine you're at a networking event.
Okay.
And you're trying to, project this air of confidence and professionalism.
Yeah.
But instead of saying something like, "Excuse me, would you mind if I joined your conversation?"
Whoa.
You blurt out, "Yo, can I hang with you guys?"
Oof, yeah, that's cringeworthy.
Right.
Yeah, it really highlights how these small choices we make can have a big impact on how we're perceived.
Totally.
It's not just about grammar. It's about social intelligence.
Ooh, I like that.
Understanding the unspoken rules of communication
Yeah.
and using them to your advantage.
Yeah, the podcast had this great example that really stuck with me.
Okay.
They compared the phrases, "I'm afraid I must decline your offer," to "Sorry, but I'll have to say no."
Yeah.
And it just made me realize that even when the message is the same, the feeling is totally different.
Absolutely. The first one feels very stiff and distant, almost like you're putting up a wall.
Right.
The second one is much warmer, more human,
Yeah.
even though it's still saying no.
Yeah.
It shows you can be direct, but you don't have to be harsh.
So how do we break down this code of formality?
Well,
Fluent Conversations identified 3 key elements.
okay.
And the first one is vocabulary.
Vocabulary, I think about it this way. Every word carries a certain weight, a certain formality level.
Okay.
For instance, require versus need, inquire versus ask.
Yeah.
Even something simple like assist versus help.
Oh, interesting.
These little swaps can instantly elevate your language or make it more approachable.
Okay, so it's not just about using fancy words.
Right.
It's about understanding which words fit the situation.
Exactly. It's about matching your vocabulary to the context and to the person that you're speaking with. And it goes beyond individual words.
Okay.
Sentence structure plays a big role as well.
Sentence structure.
Yeah, the formal language tends towards longer, more complex sentences.
Okay.
Often using the passive voice.
Like the report was submitted by the deadline.
Yes.
Instead of I sent in the report on time.
That's a great example. The first one feels detached and objective, right?
Yeah.
More appropriate maybe for formal reports or academic writing.
Yeah.
Informal language, though, it embraces contractions and phrasal verbs. It has a more relaxed conversational flow.
Yeah.
It's about creating that sense of connection, immediacy.
And of course, we can't forget about punctuation and greetings.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, obviously, "Dear Mr. Johnson" versus "Hey, Alex" is a pretty clear distinction.
Right.
But what about the subtle stuff?
That's where it gets interesting. Even something as simple as how you sign off an email.
Oh.
Sincerely versus best
Yeah.
can convey a lot about your relationship with the recipient
Right.
and the tone of the message. It's like the finishing touch that sets the seal on the whole communication.
So how do we put all this knowledge into practice?
Well,
It's one thing to understand the theory, but
Yeah.
how do we actually use it in different situations?
right. Well, that's where context comes in. Fluent Conversations did a good job at breaking it down,
Okay.
by looking at specific situations.
Okay.
Like emails or meetings or even casual chats.
That's super helpful. So let's start with emails. I feel like those can be tricky.
Oh, yeah.
Because you want to sound professional, but not like stiff,
Where emails often straddle that line between formal and informal.
Right.
You're not writing a legal document.
Yeah.
But you're also not texting your best friend.
Yeah.
So the podcast really emphasized, polite greetings,
Okay.
maintaining a professional tone throughout, and avoiding slang or like overly casual abbreviations.
So no, hey dude, what's up? It's my boss.
Probably a good idea to avoid that, yeah.
Okay, good rule of thumb. What about meetings and presentations?
Yeah.
Those feel like they're more on the formal end of the spectrum.
They often are, yeah, especially in professional settings.
Yeah.
The podcast really highlighted the importance of using transitional words and phrases
Okay.
to guide the listener through your ideas.
Okay.
Things like, furthermore, in addition, on the other hand, these little words can make your presentation sound much more structured and polished.
It's like you're building a case almost.
Exactly.
Leading them to your conclusion.
Right. And, those polite phrases we talked about earlier,
Yeah.
like, could we possibly discuss, or I'd like to propose,
Yeah.
those become even more important in these kind of settings.
Right.
Shows respect for everybody's time and input.
Okay, so we've covered emails and meetings. What about more casual interactions?
Sure.
Like friendly chats or texts.
Yeah, that's where you can loosen up a bit,
Okay.
Contractions, phrasal verbs, even emojis are all fair game.
Right.
Depending on your relationship with the person.
But how do you make sure that you're not crossing the line?
Oh, yeah.
Like, I once accidentally called my professor dude in an email.
Oh, no.
Oh, I wanted to die.
We've all been there.
Yeah.
I think the key is just being really mindful of your audience and the overall context.
Context.
Yeah. It's like choosing the right outfit, right?
Okay.
You wouldn't wear a ball gown to a backyard barbecue.
Right.
And you wouldn't show up to a job interview in sweatpants.
That's a great analogy.
So it's all about matching your communication style to the situation.
But Fluent Conversations also warn about some common pitfalls
Oh, yeah, for sure.
that we can fall into even when we're trying to be careful.
Right. One of the biggest ones is overusing fancy words.
Oh, yeah.
It's tempting to try and sound impressive,
Oh, totally.
but sometimes a simple word is way more effective than a complex one.
Right.
Clarity should always be the goal.
It's like, don't use a $5 word when a 50-cent word will do.
Exactly. Another common pitfall is mixing formal and informal language
Uh-oh.
at the wrong time.
Right.
It creates this jarring effect, like hearing a classical pianist suddenly break into a rap song.
Oh, I'm cringing just thinking about it.
And, the podcast also mentioned cultural differences,
Oh, right.
which is something I hadn't really considered before.
Yeah.
That's a crucial element,
Yeah.
What's considered polite and respectful in one culture could be seen as overly formal.
Right.
Or even rude in another.
Wow.
For example, in some cultures, it's totally normal to address people by their first names, even in a professional setting.
Yeah.
But in other cultures, using titles and last names is essential even when you know the person well.
So it's not just about knowing the rules of English.
Right.
It's about understanding the cultural context as well.
It does. It adds a whole other layer of complexity,
Totally.
but it also makes communication so much more interesting.
Right.
It's about bridging those cultural gaps and finding ways to connect authentically.
I like that perspective. So we've talked about the pitfalls. What are some strategies for avoiding them? Is it just practice? Practice.
Absolutely. Practice is key.
Okay.
Fluent Conversations had some great suggestions, like rereading emails before you send them,
Okay.
getting feedback from like a trusted colleague or friend,
Yeah.
and even role-playing different situations
Okay.
to get comfortable with both formal and informal styles.
I remember they also suggested that Roleplay Exercise.
Oh, yeah?
Where you write a formal email and then an informal text message about the same topic.
Yes.
Have you tried that one yet?
Oh, yeah.
It was
How'd it go?
it was challenging, but it was really eye-opening.
Interesting. I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, so I decided to use the scenario of asking for a deadline extension.
Okay, classic.
Yeah, right. So for the formal email to my professor, I channeled everything we talked about.
Okay, let me guess. Polite greetings, clear explanation, respectful tone.
Exactly. Yeah, it felt like I was stepping into a different persona.
It's interesting how language can do that, right? Like we can embody different roles just by changing the way we speak.
Yeah, and then writing the informal text to a friend about running late because of that same deadline.
Uh-huh.
It was like switching from a waltz to a hip-hop dance.
I bet what stood out to you the most, writing in those two contrasting styles.
It made me realize just how much we adjust our language without even thinking about it,
Yeah, it's subconscious.
Right, but being conscious of those choices
Right.
gives you this whole new level of control.
Yeah, that awareness is what makes a good communicator a great communicator.
Yeah, Fluent Conversations also mentioned how formal versus informal language has evolved over time.
Oh, that's a fascinating topic.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
It's crazy how language is like this living, breathing thing.
It is.
Constantly changing.
Yeah, the Nutcast talked about how centuries ago, formal language was so much more elaborate and ornate.
Right. Makes you appreciate how simple things are now.
Well, simpler, maybe, but also more nuanced.
That's true.
Think about all the changes we've seen with technology and the internet and mass media.
Right.
they've all had such a profound impact on the way we communicate.
Yeah.
Like the lines between formal and informal are constantly being blurred.
Totally. Like emojis and internet slang and abbreviations have become a part of everyday language.
It really makes you wonder what future historians will make of it all.
I know. It's kind of wild to think about.
Yeah, it shows how language is this reflection of our culture and values. What we see as acceptable now might have been unthinkable a few decades ago.
So how do we make sure we're communicating effectively in this constantly evolving landscape?
That's the question, isn't it? It feels like the rules are always changing.
Right.
I don't know if the rules are changing, but I think they're definitely expanding.
Okay. Yeah.
The key is to just stay curious and adaptable.
Okay.
Pay attention to how language is used in different situations.
Yeah.
Whether it's a news article or a social media post. Notice the nuances, the subtle shifts in tone and vocabulary.
So it's like we're all lifelong students of language.
We are.
Always observing and learning.
Exactly. And, Fluid Conversations reminded us that it's not about being right or wrong.
Right.
It's about using language as a tool to connect with others.
That's a good point. This whole deep dive has just been a great reminder that even something as familiar as language can still have hidden depths and complexities. And by being more mindful of our choices, we can all become more effective communicators. We can build stronger relationships and just navigate the world with more confidence,
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, I think that's a great place to wrap up.
I think so too.
So listeners, remember, language is power.
It is.
Wield it wisely and watch your world expand. All right, so are you ready to unlock the secrets to speaking English fluently?
I think everyone's ready for that.
I know I am. We're going to be diving deep into this guide, 9 secrets to speaking English fluently and easily.
Sounds good to me.
And hopefully we'll be able to break down the techniques that'll help anyone reach fluency.
Yeah, because who doesn't want a cheat sheet for fluency?
Exactly. Cut through the clutter, get right to what works.
And what I think is really cool about this guide is that it's not your typical textbook stuff.
Oh, really?
It's like it dives into the mindset.
Oh, wow.
And the strategies you need to actually make it happen in the real world.
So it's not all about just memorizing verb conjugations and all that.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. So let's jump right into the first secret then, embracing the learner's mindset.
Okay.
Sounds pretty basic, but what does that actually look like, in practice?
It's all about seeing those stumbles, those fumbles, those inevitable mistakes as like opportunities to learn.
Okay.
Instead of like beating yourself up over them.
Yeah.
Like imagine you're learning to play a really complex piece of music on the piano.
Oh, gosh.
You wouldn't expect to just nail it on the first try, would you?
Definitely not. I'd be hitting all the wrong notes, probably.
Exactly. And each one of those like mistakes, they're giving you valuable feedback. They're telling you, okay, adjust your technique here, and eventually you'll get to that flawless performance.
I like that analogy a lot.
And language is so similar.
Oh, yeah.
Like every time you kind of mess up, you're actually gaining these insights into how this amazing language works.
That's true.
I remember when I was learning Italian,
Oh, yeah.
I kept using the wrong preposition for this one particular sentence structure.
Oh, gosh.
And it was so frustrating. But instead of giving up, I decided to really analyze it, like what was going on there. And you know what? I ended up discovering this subtle little nuance that I had completely missed before.
Oh, wow.
And my understanding of prepositions just like skyrocketed after that.
That's a perfect example of how just reframing those mistakes can lead to these breakthroughs.
Totally.
But how can someone listening actually cultivate this learner's mindset? Like, what are some practical things they can do?
Well, this guide actually gives a couple of really good practical methods.
Okay.
One is to start a progress journal.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be anything fancy. Just take a few minutes each day to jot down what you've learned, maybe what went well, what you struggled with.
Okay.
Because then when you look back and you see how far you've come, it's incredibly motivating.
I love that. I love the progress journal idea because it's like a tangible record of your growth.
Yes.
Especially on those days where you feel like, I'm not getting anywhere. You can look back and be like, wow, I've come a long way.
It's so powerful.
Yeah. What about rewarding yourself for those wins, even the small ones? Does that tie into this?
Oh, absolutely. Celebrating those milestones helps reinforce positive learning habits.
Okay.
And it keeps you motivated, whether it's a small treat
Yeah.
or watching an episode of your favorite show.
Yeah.
Even just taking a break to do something you enjoy. Those little rewards, they go a long way.
I like that. All right, so let's move on to secret number 2. Speaking as often as possible, even if you're alone.
Okay.
I have to admit, I've definitely caught myself having conversations with my plants in English before.
I think we've all been there.
But, is that actually helpful?
It might sound a little silly,
Yeah.
but there's actually some solid science behind this.
Okay.
Because every time you speak, You're engaging those muscles that are involved in producing those specific sounds.
I've never thought about that.
It's like working out at the gym, but for your vocal cords and your brain.
Oh, wow.
I remember when I was getting ready for a big presentation in Spanish.
Okay.
And I was pretty nervous about it, so I started practicing out loud, even when I was alone in my apartment.
You were just talking to yourself.
Yeah, I would like pace around talking to this imaginary audience, asking them questions, responding to their reactions.
Oh, wow.
It felt a little awkward at first.
Yeah.
But the more I did it, the more natural it became.
So it's all about building that muscle memory.
Yes.
Getting your brain and your mouth used to forming those sounds.
Exactly.
Cool. And the best part is you can do it anytime, anywhere.
All right.
You know, narrate your day, have these imaginary debates, sing along to English songs. Just get those words flowing.
Exactly. Just find those opportunities to speak and let it flow.
Speaking of flow, that leads us perfectly into the next secret.
Okay.
Which emphasizes the power of listening. Why is listening so important for fluency?
Well, think about how we all learned our first language. We spent months, maybe even years, just absorbing those sounds and patterns.
Right.
Before we ever even uttered a word.
Yeah.
So listening, it's really the foundation upon which we build our understanding of any language.
You know what? I've actually noticed that when I spend a lot of time watching movies or TV shows in English, my pronunciation and intonation actually improve.
Interesting.
It's like my brain's subconsciously picking up on those nuances.
Yeah, it makes total sense.
Yeah.
It's like you're immersing yourself in the language.
Right.
Even if it's just virtually.
Yeah.
And this guide, it actually has some great suggestions for maximizing your listening practice.
I'm assuming podcasts are one of them.
Oh, podcasts are amazing.
I love podcasts.
And there's honestly something for everyone.
yeah.
Like, if you're interested in news analysis, you could try The Daily from the New York Times.
Okay.
Or if you want, like, science and storytelling, there's this really cool podcast called Radio Lab.
I've heard of that one, yeah.
And if you're looking for something a little more humorous,
Okay.
I highly recommend My Dad Wrote a Porno.
That sounds hilarious.
So funny.
Okay, I'll have to check that one out. And of course, we can't forget about music.
Of course not.
Such a great way to not only pick up new vocabulary and idioms and slang, but also just to kind of get that pronunciation and intonation in a fun way.
Right. Because it's way more fun than just doing drills.
Yes, exactly.
Singing along.
So much more enjoyable.
Much better.
Okay, now let's get into the nitty-gritty of language learning.
All right.
Secret number 4, chunking and collocations.
Love these.
Can you break down for us what those are and why they're so important for fluency?
Okay, so imagine you're building a house.
Okay.
It would take forever if you had to lay each brick one by one, right?
Yeah, that would be very time-consuming.
Chunking and collocations are like having these prefabricated walls and roof sections.
Oh.
So you could assemble things much faster
Okay.
and create a more, like, cohesive structure.
I'm liking this analogy. So instead of focusing on individual words, we should be looking for these chunks of language.
Yes. And these chunks are called collocations.
Okay.
They're so common in English.
Okay.
For example, we say heavy rain,
Okay.
not strong rain.
Oh, that's interesting.
Or make a decision,
Yeah.
not take a decision.
I see. I think I do that sometimes.
And that's where these collocations come in. They help you sound more natural and fluent by using combinations that native speakers just instinctively use.
Yeah, because I notice that sometimes, like, I know all the vocabulary, but I can't quite figure out how to put them together in the right way.
Exactly.
So how can listeners start incorporating these chunking and collocations into their routine?
So one really simple technique is to create what's called a phrase notebook.
Okay.
So as you're reading or listening and you come across these collocations, just jot them down in your notebook.
Okay.
Along with their meanings and maybe some example sentences.
I like that. And I would assume that these space repetition apps we talked about earlier would also be helpful for this.
Oh, they're amazing for this.
Yeah.
Because space repetition helps move information from your short-term memory to your long-term memory
Okay.
by presenting you with that material at gradually increasing intervals.
Gotcha.
So it's like having a personal trainer, but for your vocabulary.
Nice. Okay, let's move on to secret number 5. And this one might be reassuring to our listener.
Okay.
It's okay to simplify your sentence structures, especially at the beginning.
Especially at the beginning.
Does that mean we don't have to worry about grammar?
No, grammar's still important.
Okay.
But fluency isn't about trying to build these like super complex sentences right away.
Right.
Actually, using shorter, simpler sentences can make you sound more confident and more fluent,
Interesting.
especially when you're still developing your skills.
So it's more about clarity and conciseness than trying to, sound super smart with your grammar.
Exactly. Imagine you're explaining like a really complex concept to someone.
Okay.
It's way easier to understand if you break it down into smaller bite-sized chunks, right?
Yeah, for sure. I definitely get caught up sometimes trying to construct these elaborate sentences, and it just ends up sounding confusing.
It happens to the best of us.
Yeah.
So there's a really simple technique from the guide.
Okay.
You start with a basic sentence,
Uh-huh.
like, I enjoy reading.
Okay.
Then you gradually add details and complexity.
Oh, I like that.
So you could say, I enjoy reading books about history,
Okay.
and then expand it further. I enjoy reading books about history, especially biographies of influential leaders.
So you're building upon that simple sentence.
Yes.
Without making it overly complicated.
Exactly.
So it's finding that balance between clarity and complexity.
Yes.
And, starting simple and then gradually working your way up.
That's the key. And don't be afraid to experiment and see what feels more natural for you.
Yeah.
You might find that certain sentence structures are easier for you to produce than others.
Right.
The important thing is to keep practicing, keep refining those skills.
Practice makes perfect, as they say.
Or at least progress.
Or at least progress, yeah.
That's the goal.
Exactly.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the secrets of fluent English.
So we've already uncovered some really cool strategies so far.
Yeah, we're just getting started.
But I'm always up for more tips and tricks, you know what I mean? What else does this guide have in store for us?
It talks a lot about staying curious
Okay.
and making your learning engaging.
I can definitely see how that would be important. Like if you're genuinely interested in something, it's got to be way easier to stay motivated, right?
Exactly. It's like instead of slogging through those boring textbook exercises,
Oh, yeah.
you're exploring subjects that actually pique your curiosity.